Hello, I'm Jim Warburton. My wife and I, Barb, own and are called Long Lake Simmentals. We raise some purebred Simmental cattle, a small herd, about 30. We are basically a hobby farm in that both she and I work off farm. The farming operation is now just a hobby. We are located north of Poplar Point, Manitoba, a couple of miles. We are very, very fortunate that all of the bush on our property has not been knocked down. Our cattle yard is pretty much surrounded by bush. It's open to the southwest a little bit, but the natural bush around the cattle yard is worth a fortune in the wintertime. It can be blowing and storming out in the open and the cattle are just comfortable. Even though there is a shed for them, they go in it, but they could survive quite nicely without the shed. We haven't got a lot of shelter belts. There's ones we have planted around the yard for exposure from the east and the south, but that is the only shelter belts we have. We haven't any field shelter belts. What I wish to talk about today is the bale feeding, which we accidentally discovered was an option last fall. My cattle came home from community pasture and from our other pastures one afternoon late, and I realized that they're hungry. I should put out some hay. But my fork was not set up on the tractor to put out bales with yet, but I did have a few coarse bales on the bale mover. So I went into the bush pasture where they were, and I pushed the bale off. And rather than tip the mover down so it would slide off into a row, I just pushed it off the back and it fell on its end. I drove ahead and I dropped off another one. And ding, the light comes on. I can just put them out like this. They fall on their end, the strings are easy to take off, and they're spaced out. So seeing as I had made that discovery, I then was thinking about the bales that were still out in the fields that I hadn't brought in from the summertime, and thought, I can put these out in the pastures next to our cattle yard and let the cows graze on them early winter or early spring, and I won't have to use the tractor at all. And that has worked out really, really well. We calve starting early to mid-January, and I have two pastures side by side divided by a fence, about 5 acres each, that I put those bales into last fall. About 80 in the first one and 60 in the second. And that's what I had left out in the fields. And we grazed the first field November till early January. We didn't want to have the cows calving while they were grazing out there. We wanted to keep them close to the sheds at calving time because it's winter after all. And that worked out great. Just about the time that it was time to lock them out of the field, it was time to start preparing them for calving. The other concern that we have has always been, what do you do in the spring when the yard goes to mush? I do not have a four-wheel drive tractor. And sometimes feeding bales, even though I have a fork on the back of the tractor, which I use rather than a front end loader, allows me to go places where I normally couldn't with a front end loader, because if I get stuck backing up, I can usually go ahead and get out. This year has been great. Once things started to go soft, I opened the gate and let the cows out to the bales in the field. I had to blow snow that first day when I opened it up because there was a lot of snow out there yet. I made 2 or 3 trails with the blower. The cows followed the trails and they went to the bales, the last of the bales in the first field, for a week, and then I moved them into the second field the same way, made a trail. They discovered pretty quickly that the bales were there and that the ones on the north side of the field weren't as deep in snow as the ones on the south side, so they worked their way down the row on the north side, and they've been out there ever since. They found ways, or perhaps it was because my electric fence system broke down, a wire got broke and my electric fence wasn't working. They got away on me with regards to controlling them with electric wire. But this making trails thing seems to have allowed me to limit their access a little bit until now they're going where they wish. I've been not taking strings off at this point just because I don't want them to gobble up all of the good hay all at once, make them work for it a little bit. I'll be going out with the tractor and picking the strings out of the little mounds that are left, but they've cleaned it up amazingly well. I am really pleased at how well they have cleaned the hay up, whether the strings were taken off or not. I am certainly going to do this again. It's a win-win. One, I've already got them on the mover when I bring them into the yard. The hay that I was feeding late winter, I was having to dig out from snowbanks that were right over top of the last of the bales. And it was a lot of work to get the hay out. Letting them out into the field to eat what was there was a win-win. The snow blew around the bales, but the bales were clean. And when I did chop strings, I could chop right to the ground, pull the strings off, and let them have them. It is worked really well for us, and I would recommend it to anyone who has cattle that aren't 100, 200, 300, because that may become a big issue, is sheer numbers. But for a small operation, having 50 or 60 bales that they can pick at worked really well for us. Thank you.